interventions, we have a realistic chance of stopping this outbreak. We have a window of opportunity. Maybe you're tired of me saying window of opportunity, but there is a window of opportunity. Cases in China and the rest of the world, it's not even comparable. More than 40,000 in China, while in the rest of the world, it's only in the 300s, and only one does. You strike hard is there when the window of opportunity is there. So that's what we are saying to the rest of the world. Let's be serious in using the window of opportunity we have. We shouldn't lose this opportunity. We will regret it. And the opportunity was created because of the measures that China is taking in Wuhan and the other affected provinces. That is slowing the spread of the virus to the rest of the world. I don't think this status can stay the same for long. That's why we have to use the current window of opportunity to hit and stand in unison to fight this virus in every corner. If we don't, we could have far more cases and far higher costs. And I don't think anybody wants that. This is a common enemy. And we have to fight it using this window of opportunity and fight it hard. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros, for these opening remarks. So just to remind...
may I add one
please,
thing?
go ahead.
Some colleagues here, including my colleague journalists, friends, were asking, where is Maria? I didn't know Maria is so popular now. So Maria Van Kerkhove is part of the expert team, and she is in Beijing, and she is well if you're worried. So you will see her virtually if she's listening. Just for your information, so she's with Bruce in Beijing, and hopefully she is listening as Bernard had said. But I'm very happy to see the respect you have for her, and I'm glad that, which I'm really proud, they're working day and night, 24/7, round the clock, under stress, but really going with commitment and saying that we will not rest until this outbreak is over. So Maria is one of you so much for reminding me to asking me where her whereabouts is.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros, and greetings to Dr. Van Kerkhove, who is listening to us. Before we start taking questions from the floor, again to remind the journalists online to click raise hand on the right side of their screen, and to press *9. So we will start with the questions here. Well, gentlemen, Christian, then we will go on this side. Please introduce yourself and the outlet you are working for, and please one short question. Thank you.
Okay, it's Yang with Xinhua News Agency. As Dr. Tedros mentioned, the entire UN system is willing to help. So could you give us a few examples on what the other agencies can contribute to the control and prevention of the outbreak? Thank you so much.
Yes, we have many sister agencies. Do I need to use this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. No. Okay. Okay. We have many important sister agencies in the United Nations system, many of whom need good information in order to manage their day-to-day operations and business continuity. So our humanitarian partners, peacekeeping partners need to understand the virus like every other global business operation needs to understand what's happening with the virus. But there are many of our UN agencies like the International Maritime Organization, the International Aviation Organization, who also can contribute huge amounts of information to our understanding, and equally we work closely with them. We have agencies like UNICEF, very important in risk communications and social stabilization and working in education in schools and in the healthcare system and on infection prevention and control. And we work very closely with our colleagues in UNICEF. There are the agencies who work on humanitarian response, and they obviously have a duty of care to refugees and to others, and they need our inputs in terms of best practice for themselves. And we have the financial institutions like the World Bank, who are in a very strong position to look at the financial implications and shocks associated with this, and look at means of mitigating those impacts. So the idea here is, under the leadership of the SG with the Director General, to ensure WHO is doing is feeding into the UN system in terms of its own business, but equally that the UN agencies who can contribute to the overall global effort are doing so. And in particular, I would make reference to our resident coordinators in country for the UN system, who integrate all of the UN operations in country. Many countries with weaker health systems may also have weaknesses in their economies and other potential shocks that might arise. So our country representatives, WHO's country representatives, are working very, very closely with the resident coordinators of the UN system, and we intend to continue doing that, and in fact have had large-scale teleconferences with all resident coordinators in the world. I think a couple of days ago we brought them all together last week. So I think that's the crisis management team operation, and this will be a joint operation between the United Nations Office for Crisis Coordination and your Strategic Health Operations Centre here at WHO in Geneva.
Thank you very much, Christian. For journalists, please use the mic. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hello, this is Christiana with the German press agency, and it's a question for Dr. Tedros. There are reports today that the National Health Commission in China has changed the reporting rules of cases, meaning that people who are confirmed to be infected but do not show symptoms are not being counted in the statistics. Have you heard about that, and what is your response?
But we have regular communication with them, so we will check that, and we have also people on the ground, so we will check and get back to you. Thank you.
Yes, please, here, and then we will have more questions from the room here, because we have all journalists who travel to Geneva, so we will give a little bit of a priority to them. Yes, please, go ahead. The mic is on. It has to be... Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Tarek. Good afternoon. Thank you. Xing from Xinhua News Agency. We've learned that there are also Chinese researchers attending today's forum in a virtual way. So to what extent may the experience of China's health workers and frontline and the collecting and sharing of data by the Chinese help design the roadmap of this research? Thank you.
They actually have first-hand experience and a lot of experience, and surely they will help. And not only that, they will significantly shape the roadmap. But I will ask my other colleagues also to comment on this. But we expect a lot from them.
Just to add, we were very fortunate this morning to have both Dr. George Gao and Dr. Wu from China CDC connected online, and they presented the data, particularly the research that has already been initiated in China. And we also have participants who are going to stay with us throughout the 2 days. And it's essential that they are involved in every aspect of the planning of the research, since most of the cases are in China now. So it would be critical scientists and doctors and researchers to be involved.
Dr. Kini, do you want to add something?
Well, also to say that there have been a lot of preparation from the WHO colleagues for this forum, and that thematic group have met virtually through teleconferences as much as they were available, because they have other things to deal with right now. The Chinese scientists have been involved in this discussion, and we certainly hope that they will continue to be in drafting, in setting this roadmap. We also have had the opportunity to have vaccine manufacturers from China participate in today's meeting.
And Sylvie has more information on the question you asked, so please, Sylvie.
So yes, we asked our colleagues in the field about those changes of case definition, and indeed normal to adapt the case definition to the reality. So recently they have done the 4th adaptation to include mild cases and asymptomatic cases. And so if asymptomatic cases become positive at the laboratory testing, then they include them into the confirmed cases number. And so they have indeed broaden the case definition, because before the testing was only done on people who were hospitalized or attended some medical attention, because even because they are following contacts, apparently they have also included some asymptomatic people they are followed up, or post-symptomatic, because in the contact list. Yeah.
Yes. So including the mild and the asymptomatic actually is a good idea. It's good. It's good that they did that. Yeah.
Clarifying this, now let's take a few more from the room. Let's try our colleagues who traveled to Geneva to be with us here. So I'll start with Victoria, then Tom, then John, please.
Donald from Channel 4 News in London. There have been reports of a Chinese national in Burkina Faso who's been tested for coronavirus, and as we speak, we're told that there is a China Embassy, WHO, and Burkina Faso Ministry of Health press conference. Can you tell us any about what would be the first reported case in Africa?
So we don't have that information. We had some suspected cases in 3 or 4 countries, which were all negative. But the Burkina Faso is something new which we haven't heard about. Follow up on that. Thank you.
Tom, please.
You rightly mentioned the window of opportunity. As time passes, are you becoming more or less confident that this virus can be contained?
As time passes, my confidence will depend on how, the strengths of measures we take. And that's why we're as, aggressive as possible, because we're still in containment strategy. And we shouldn't allow space to have local transmission. So it depends. We may, miss or squander this opportunity or use this opportunity. And I'm saying we still have time, and let's not squander this opportunity. There is opportunity, window of opportunity we can use still now. Yes. And there should be strong leadership, strong coordination, and they have really to do all the things, take all the measures they need to contain it.
Thank you very much. John, please.
Yeah, thank you. There we go. There is a cruise ship, the Westerdam luxury liner, which has been unable to dock. It's been turned away from multiple ports. Given your guidance on travel, do you have any message about that? And have you talked with any of the countries that have refused docking to this Westerdam cruise ship?
We're in daily discussions as we speak with the International Maritime Organization, who deal with Jawad Major to my left. Our Assistant Director General for Preparedness has been leading those discussions. We've been looking at a number of different ships, mainly cargo vessels, not necessarily cruise liners. It's really important that there's an appropriate risk management approach taken here, and that also state parties be reminded of their obligations under what IMO terms free pratique, which is the ability for ships to dock unimpeded, especially to unload cargo, and also reminding our state parties of the principle of dignity and human rights of travellers, which the IHR also enshrines. There are manageable risks associated with the conveyances, and there's plenty of guidance on how to do this properly. We need to ensure that there's neither an overreaction, and we need a proper risk management approach to this, as we want to see to all types of gatherings, and we're going to have this more and more in the coming weeks as we see more events and conferences, and we see cruise ships. Anywhere where people come and congregate, there is always going to be concern. But we need to balance those concerns with the need for our society, civilization, our economies to move. So we need to take a risk management approach. We must accept that in these circumstances, there is no such thing as a zero risk. We must minimize risks, we must protect people and be ready to react appropriately should something untoward or something unexpected happen. And in this case of cruise ships, again, a proper risk management approach dealing with this issue is what we're advising. And as I say, we will be further analysing the number of ships who are in this particular circumstance, and we'll have more data on that tomorrow. But again, we call for the normal obligations under free pratique and for the normal principles of the dignity and human rights of travellers to be upheld.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan. We will take one more from here, from Tulip, who came from BBC here, and then we will go online. Tulip.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe you must be tired of me saying for some time now, since I became DG, many journalists asked me, what's your, what wakes you, what we say, pandemic flu, and any pandemic disease. And the reason for that is exactly what you said, because we have countries with weaker health systems. And as you know, we're as strong as the weak. And the world is getting smaller, and it's a globalized world. And whatever happens at the weakest link could affect all of us. So that's why when we think about investing in our respective health systems, we should not forget to invest in countries with weaker health systems that need support. So mine in the middle of this outbreak is the same. We have to invest in preparedness. And preparedness means helping those countries who need a help hand to strengthen their health system. And that's going to be our guarantee. And we have identified, by the way, as WHO, the minimum is 30 countries. If you push to the maximum, are not more than 45 countries who need our support. And investing in those countries with weaker health systems is important. I think we're now having a real problem in our hands. And we must take what's happening now seriously and really commit to preparedness, to strengthening our health systems all over the world and make this world safer. Still, I said it many times, I have a great concern that if this virus makes it to a weaker health system, it will create havoc. It will. For now, it doesn't seem so, but it doesn't mean that it will not happen. It may. It depends on how really we lead this response and how we respond to the outbreak. So that's why I don't think it's too late. We have the window of opportunity, and the whole world should really stand in unison to contribute to strengthening the countries with weaker health systems. And that's the answer for now. But that's not just for now, but we have to continue. This is not a few months or a few years of work. It will be many years of work that should be sustained and make our health system as strong as possible. Because we have already seen it. Outbreaks can bring serious upheavals, serious consequences to the world. It's not just a health security issue, or it's not a matter of somebody sick or, the number were dead. It's a matter of political, social, and economic upheavals. It can affect all areas of society. To take it seriously. The world, when it talks about terrorism, and imagine the level of preparation and so on is immense. To be honest, a virus is more powerful in creating political, economic, and social upheaval than any terrorist attack. I was a foreign minister, been one of my hat, terrorism and so on, but a virus can have more powerful consequences than any terrorist action. And that's true. And if the world doesn't want to wake up and consider this enemy, virus, as public enemy number one, I don't think we will learn from our lessons. One enemy, and to the whole world, and to the whole humanity. And that's why we have to do everything to invest in health systems, to invest in preparedness. And that's why I always say that's what wakes me up at night, and it should wake all of us at night. It's the worst enemy you can imagine. It can create havoc, political and social. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros. We will go for a few questions from journalists online, and hope if we are all short, we will be able to get back to the room. I'll call first two colleagues from CNN. Vasco, can you hear us, please? Yes, can you hear me? Yes, please speak a little bit more loud. My question
is on comments made by a doctor in Hong Kong today who said that this virus could reach up to 60% of the world population. What do you have to say on that?
There's someone from Hong Kong who said that this virus could reach 60% of the world population.
Yeah, if fires are left unchecked, they can burn down a lot of the forest, and one can speculate how far a fire like this can burn. I think we, as the DG said, when we look at disease outside China, we're dealing with less than 400 cases in 24 countries in over a month of transmission. That does not mean that won't escalate. It doesn't mean that won't accelerate. But that is not, in that sense, an insurmountable problem. We have the unknowns about period of transmissibility. We have the unknowns about mild cases. But what the data is telling us, that we still have an opportunity. We have the opportunity to contain, to confine, to slow down, to prepare. And we need to be extremely careful not to overly, everyone is talking about social media, everyone is talking about staying calm and keeping our populations calm, yet every chance we get, we seem like we want to accelerate the infodemic and not contain the epidemic. So I think we need to be very balanced and careful here with our populations, with our communities. They already have concerns, and they're concerned. And the real power our communities to take action, to protect themselves, to give them things to do. And there are things that every single human being on this planet can do to protect themselves from this disease. So let's be careful in throwing around figures, speculation, and scaring people. Let us plan and focus, laser focus on containment, confinement, and slowing the virus down. And if we have to deal with the circumstances at a later date of a more widespread epidemic, we will do that. And that could be a milder disease at that point. So I just caution everybody to not start throwing around figures that there is no basis for at the moment.
I will maybe add to that, remind you one thing. When Ebola started, if you remember, there was a lot of speculation, and some people were saying it will really move or spread all over the world. This is and estimate speculation after speculation. And our position was, okay, expecting the worst may be fine, but let's see what we can do. And we said, as WHO, containment is possible. So let's not just go into extremes. And you remember, we were actually being attacked for advocating for containment, keeping this virus, Ebola, in DRC and finally finish it. And you remember that. And what happened now? A year and a half, it's contained in DRC. You remember it crossed to Uganda, 3-4 cases, and it was hammered because Uganda was prepared. It's still contained in DRC. There were speculations, there could be speculations. And I don't mind with speculations, but let's have also the balance. What can we do within our hand to really contain this outbreak? And the strategy, by the way, with what we're using now is the same. Hammer the source, hammer the epicenter, slow or prevent the spread of that virus to the rest of the world. And that was exactly what we were trying to do in DRC. So we don't want, as WHO, go into speculations. We prefer actually, okay, people can have projections, that we prefer what can be done with the equipment or with the solutions at hand and do our best to contain it at the source without undermining its gravity, without undermining the serious consequences it may have. And that's what we did, and that's what we want for this one. Of course, Ebola and this are not the same. Ebola is lousy. This is airborne. Corona is airborne. It's more contagious. And you have seen it, how it went into 24 countries, although it's a number of cases. In terms of potential to wreak havoc, the corona is very different from Ebola. Corona has more potency, virulence. We take it more seriously, but still the position should be, instead of speculation, really to focus at the source, to do everything at the source, slow the spread, stop the spread, invest more in containment, and based on the situation, move into other strategies if necessary. So, meaning we have to be realistic, calm, but we have to take also serious measures. That's what we advise. And many of the instruments to check it are in our hands. But we can expect, of course, serious things, but let's do whatever we can and contain it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros. Let's take one more question from line. John Cohen. John, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes? Do you hear me?
Yes.
So can you quickly clarify what the virus name is? You said the disease name. And also, have you received any information from China about the environmental samples tested at the marketplace, and any animals were tested? Do you have any details at all?
This is the disease, it's not the virus.
Yeah, that's just the disease name.
It's COVID-19.
Do you want to? You can move that.
So the name of the disease is COVID, it's coronavirus disease 19. And the reason for choosing the name, I think the Director General pointed out what certain principles are when you name the disease. Coronavirus is a group of viruses that's quite already many known human strains of corona and many, many animal strains of corona. So it is possible that in the future there'll be another strain of coronavirus, and then also named by the year in which it appeared. So it allowed the naming of other coronaviruses. And at the same time, this disease also allows the entire spectrum of clinical manifestations to be covered. It is because it's a respiratory, it could also manifest in other forms, and so it's a broader name. The virus itself is named by the international group of virologists who will look into the taxonomy that they follow, and then the genus, etc., would be specified. But it's important to have a name for this disease that everybody uses, both for scientific purpose. When you want to compare the literature, you want to compare data, you need a common terminology, and also to avoid a number of different stigmatizing or other forms of confusing names.
Very much. I think there was another question, Sylvie.
Yes, we have received information on the animal source of this virus. So from the first genetic sequences that was put on the web and publicly available to scientists, some scientists have done studies and they have identified that this virus is very similar to a virus that is a coronavirus that can be found in bats. But when they did some sampling in the Wuhan seafood market, they didn't find so many bats. And so it's very likely that there is an intermediate host that contaminated, and but still they have done a lot in various animal species, but they have not found yet which intermediate host could have been the amplifier, at least in this Wuhan city. So studies are ongoing because they are checking a number of animal species. So it takes, what they have done as well is they have tested a number of environmental samples on surfaces and different places in the market. And so they have found indeed the coronavirus that is now responsible of this epidemic in humans. So there was some environmental contamination, probably also at the beginning of this outbreak. Now has been closed, has been disinfected, and so this environmental contamination doesn't exist anymore. But studies are still ongoing to try to better understand what has happened in the animal world before human beings were contaminated. And it's still ongoing, and we hope that this meeting on research will provide us a little bit more information on this aspect of the not very clear and requires more research.
Okay, so I used the military word airborne. It meant to spread via droplets or respiratory transmission. Please take it that way, not the military language. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For back to the room, as I have some questions. We'll start with Bodhi, then Stephanie, then Gunilla. Very short, one question, please.
Understood that was we have to protect the first country and we have to support the first country. We understand that already. But as you said, we have to be realist. We have more interest. It's for example, the priority focus on the epicenter where the disease is existing. So could you tell us more about the next guide map on the epicenter? About the science and pharmacology.
What should be done in the epicenter of the outbreak next?
Other than what's being done now?
I think, well, certainly from our observations and from working with authorities in China, they've been heavily focused on three issues, I think. Wuhan and Hubei itself, the surrounding or the more heavily affected than others, and they've sort of had a three-pronged approach, and you can see the way they've had very strong, but they've extended those measures to defined areas outside Wuhan where they feel the epidemiology was getting more difficult or more challenging. So they're operating sort of, I believe, on sort of a three-pronged strategy. You can see over the last number of days and weeks that the initial focus was clearly on caring for the sick and really dealing with that shock to the system of so many unwell people presenting, and you saw that with the efforts to build new isolation facilities. But increasingly what we're seeing is the large community committees and the mobilization of community-based surveillance, community-based activity in order to, you can see by the way the case definition is being shifted now. There's a move now to move out and trying to detect all of cases, even the milder cases. And that seems like a very prudent thing because you want to check all the cases. When you're facing a fire, a large fire, and this happened in West Africa too with Ebola, when the disease was extremely intense, it's very hard to do the classic public health things like contact tracing. You're dealing with a massive wave of cases, you're trying to deal with the sick. And as you get control of that, and as the number of very sick patients drops or stabilizes, you try to push the surveillance out towards the community. You try to detect more cases. That's if you're still focusing on containment as your approach, because you want to try and break the chains of transmission. So we believe China is really pushing the surveillance into the community. It's an attempt to try and transmission. We've said it before, neither they nor we are sure that that will work, because the virus has its own characteristics in terms of its period of transmission or asymptomatic people being able to transmit. But they're making an attempt now to push surveillance further and further out into the community and see if we can shut down the virus. There is no guarantee of that. So that's what we're seeing in terms of the shift. And our team in China is working closely with Chinese authorities and scientists to look at that. I think the other part of this understanding of the clinical severity and on the clinical picture, because if the disease were to spread further in the world, and if we see more cases in the world, the clinical techniques and the clinical information and the clinical knowledge that's been gained in China right now will be absolutely central to the successful treatment of patients elsewhere in the world. So that's another vital gift to the world. So again, pulling that information together in a systematic way, gathering systematic clinical data now, not just reports, not just anecdotes, but systematic clinical information is absolutely central to success. So all of the activities are aimed at containment, but all of those activities will support a broader mitigation effort should the virus in other parts of the world. Right now with the caseload in China, well, it's a very terrible toll. And again, we recognize the work of the health workers and the suffering of communities and families in China. They're suffering on behalf of us all. But there is an opportunity to test drugs, and already at least one clinical trial is underway, and we're working with Chinese scientists on trials that will allow the immediate testing of drugs in that setting, and the results again of those trials will be available to clinicians in other parts of the world. So again, that's another important strand, and again a further and complete understanding of the source. As I said, a presumption of the source is a dangerous thing, because even if we were successful in this attempt to confine and contain the virus, don't know the source, then we're equally vulnerable in future to a similar outbreak. Is a very important next step in the strategy.
Very much. Some of our speakers have to go, so we'll take super short 2 questions that I promised to Stephanie and to Gunilla. Very short, because we have to go. We will have other opportunity tomorrow. We'll be here. Stephanie.
I just wondered, the Director General, in your speech, you referred to a very grave threat, potentially to the rest of the world from this virus, which is clearly an emergency in China. I wondered if you could elaborate on that, especially for our visual colleagues, and what led you to use that language this morning. Was there some change in your risk assessment overnight? Was it information coming in from Hong Kong about suspect cases in a building which was later dismissed on the basis of results? Could you elaborate?
No. The issue is about the use of the window of opportunity. We have a window of opportunity now for the rest of the world. We see what's happening in China in terms of the number of cases and fatality. So if we don't use the window of opportunity we have now, if we don't operate with a sense of urgency, there could be a serious consequence. That's what I meant to say. And I'm reminding the world to use this opportunity to do whatever it can to contain this outbreak. Do everything it can. And there is time, because as I said, the number of cases in the rest of the world is less than 400, and there is only 1 death. That's a window of. So I'm reminding, there is time, the time is ticking. And time is the essence in this outbreak. We'll not sleep and wait. We cannot sleep. So we have to operate with a sense of urgency. and with strong political commitment throughout the world. And then we can beat this outbreak. If not, then the other side will happen. So that's why. I was reminding this morning, I reminded now, I will continue to remind until the world really takes this seriously, do it with sense of urgency, and believes from the heart that the essence. Time is the essence now. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last question, Gunilla, and then we will conclude. Very short, please.
Yes, hello, Gunilla von Hall, Swedish Svenska Dagbladet. I have a question about the British man who obviously infected 11 people while he traveled across the world. What does this tell you, this case? Does it tell you that the virus is changing in any way, it's mutating? And how can countries prepare for these kind of cases and this kind of spread?
So my colleagues will say more, but that's why we're saying time is the essence, because mutation is another issue. Cross every host, then you know what happens, and everybody knows. So that's why we say time is the essence again, but I would be happy if our colleagues could say, and mutation being one of them.
I really wish we could refrain from personalizing these issues down to individuals. Deeply, deeply unhelpful. These are very unfortunate events in which families and others are wrapped up in, friends and others. There are circumstances that allow disease to transmit. People are not at fault. They are never at fault in this situation. So let's be extremely careful here. It's really, really important that we don't attach unnecessary stigma to this. This is an unfortunate event, and there are circumstances around the way in which disease may have been transmitted, and there may be other clusters like that. This is by no means, and compared to other events, a massive super spreading event. This is an unusual event, and it is a wake-up call. There may be other circumstances in which this disease can spread like this, and we need to study those circumstances for sure. But it doesn't change our overall assessment. And again, I cast your minds back to SARS. When we had the Metropole Hotel, everyone said it's all over. It's global now. And then we had the Amoy Gardens, and everyone said it's all over. It's in these buildings, and that's it. We can't be stopped, right? And it's important that we stop when we have those events. The cruise ship issue in Japan at the moment. And these unusual events offer an opportunity to study the virus, but none of them individually change the overall risk assessment. But you take them all together, and that may change your risk assessment. We need to be careful to study these types of situations, understand more from them what's happening, and if overall, through a series of those events, we see a dynamic shift, then we will tell you openly and transparently that we see that. At the moment, we don't see that.
Thank you very much. We will conclude here. Thanks to everyone watching us online, dialing in by phone, watching us on our Twitter account. We will have audio file very shortly and transcript likely tomorrow morning posted on our website regarding tomorrow press conference on emergency committee on Ebola outbreak in DRC and the end of research forum. We will send a note either tonight or tomorrow morning. So thank you for being with us and have a nice day.
We knew of 41 cases, but this many countries were seeing cases imported among travelers using the known numbers that travel. There were some estimates of undering, and it's a mix of not hiding cases, but really trying to keep up either with the mild cases or, as you say, now that the disease is so common that the laboratory capacity can't keep up, or the kits aren't, there's not available kits. So we absolutely assume there's a much greater number of cases, and China's actually reporting what they call suspected cases that haven't yet been tested, and then that's typically how we assess outbreaks and emerging infections. Your question about the quarantine center, theoretically a quarantine center should be people who have no symptoms, who are being observed to see, because you think they're higher risk than others because they've been exposed, you want to observe them, and at the first sign of symptoms you want to move them out of exposure to anyone else so that they can be isolated. The concern about putting people who may be ill together could be a problem in terms of acquiring the infection. People who go in for something else like influenza or measles and then come down with the novel coronavirus. So that's why the circumstances of isolation are so critical. It's one of the reasons I believe that China built those hospitals with individual rooms so that they could keep people they knew were sick separate from others and safely care for them. But the ability to surge for a very large-scale outbreak can be challenging for anyone.
Dr. Schuchat, thank you for the extra time. We have 2 more questions in the back, and we'll wrap it up.
Hi, my name's Eric Egan with the Confucius Institute U.S. Center. Earlier, you were talking about how you were coordinating with the business and private sector to identify their role in helping combat the spread of the virus. As a nonprofit that focuses on Chinese language and education and cultural exchange, I was wondering if you have identities in which language differences or cultural differences may be creating barriers towards helping fight the spread of the virus, and if there's a space in which nonprofits like ours are able to get involved and help either through translation or community outreach.
The communication aspects of an emerging infection are really critical to both understand concerns and communicate effectively to the different groups. We know that there's lots of channels for communication in many different communities can be important. So obviously this outbreak is occurring in a context of not just 24/7 news, but social media on a level that probably many of us couldn't have imagined when we were dealing with SARS in 2003. And so those who can rapidly identify the new threats or the new concerns, sometimes, WHO has done rumor monitoring for years of problems before they may get officially reported, but sifting rumor versus verifying them is challenging. The other thing is getting good information through trusted channels is quite important to affected groups and those who are indirectly affected. We know that in many outbreaks, different become stigmatized, and that's the thing that we're already worried about, here in the U.S., around the world, that somebody coming back from this community or that community may be treated differently when they try to replace, and that businesses in a certain neighborhood might be boycotted. And so I think the language and cultural competence of an organization like yours can be an asset to this type of response.
Thank you. This is from Sound of Hope Radio Network. My question is, from yesterday, the co-chair bipartisan commission on biotechnic, former Senator Joe Lieberman said, I heard that President Trump and President Xi has a Power One conversation, much of which was about coronavirus and how to better deal with it. And we heard from Secretary Pompeo's Twitter that U.S. has sent supply of materials to Hubei, to China. And we also heard from Senate Tom Cotton that he doubt the coronavirus came from Chinese biotechnic library, which this is from CNN. I read the news from Epic Time yesterday that this kind of biotech library was controlled by Jiang Zemin, the new old CCP's leader, Jiang Zemin's son. And we also know Jiang Zemin have got power from Tiananmen massacre during 20 years, and so many human rights violations like the Christian, Tibetan, Falun Gong practitioners has been persecuted by this false Christian. Yeah, and we heard this the was recontrolled by the new leader Xi Jinping. So, in your view, is it about change toward the effective containing to the virus? And in your view, what next step you suggest to to stop and kill the virus? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think what I can say is that working closely with the World Health Organization and countries around the world, including China, to ban how best to control the virus, both in China as well as elsewhere. And it's a critical time. The U.S. has been a leader in public health preparedness and understanding of respiratory viruses like influenza and SARS, and we're trying to be a help to other nations as well while we prepare the U.S. for what may become worse here. Thank you.
Dr. Shukett, thank you for joining us, and thank you for giving us so much time. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present our National Press Club coffee mug, something that may come in very handy over the coming days and weeks. Thank you again for joining us, and good luck.
唔好害人哋啲仔女啦。好心啊，啲狠勁有乜辛苦？日日打黑色衫，打黑色衫，我哋嘅後生仔。好心啊，啲狠勁天生日日爭取打交，爭取打交，又破壞香港。打傳媒，打傳媒，打議員，打議員，打圈仔，打圈仔，打死黑警，打爛呢個驚啊！死黑警又唔做嘢，又唔讀書，死黑警點解我哋唔做嘢？你睇。我哋黑警啊，全家仔女啦，死黑警，我冇罪㗎，點解要搞我咧？就係我哋仇人，黑警日日鬧事，黑警破壞香港法例，黑警破壞香港法例，黑警就係我哋仇人。黑警日日鬧事，黑警破壞香港法例，黑警破壞香港法例，香港法例。